Welcome to Pilgrim's Rest channel. Our purpose is to introduce the spiritual books passed down through the ages to the saints, so that as you walk the pilgrim's path, you can find rest and supply here to regain strength. We are launching into a deep dive today, and this one, it's aimed squarely at the pilgrim who wants, real intellectual substance alongside spiritual passion. Our sources are centered on a classic work. It's deep spiritual reflection mixed with some really rigorous, almost mathematical thought.
Yeah, it's a demanding text.
It is. It's a text that doesn't just offer simple rest. It really provides the kind of foundation you need for a secure, long journey.
That's right. And today we're looking at the work of, well, one of history's most influential theologians and thinkers, really a mind that shaped American spiritual and philosophical life, Jonathan Edwards.
And the specific work we're focusing on is his powerful essay, The End for Which God Created the World.
Sure, yes.
Right. It's definitely not light reading, as you said, but
Yeah.
maybe essential reading for anyone serious about the depths of their faith.
I think so. Our mission, really, for you, the learner, the pilgrim listening, is to explore why this fairly intense 18th century text is still such a vital source of spiritual clarity today.
It offers a pretty uncompromising view of the universe, doesn't it?
It does, but paradoxically, that view can bring incredible peace. We need to kind of unpack the philosophical engine Edwards builds to answer that ultimate question of existence.
Okay, let's start with Edwards himself. People might know him from, say, The Great Awakening, maybe that famous sermon.
Sinners in the hands of an angry God.
Right. But just reducing him to that one sermon is, well, it's a massive disservice, isn't it?
Absolutely. He was a master synthesist, a philosopher using logic and reason to support the most passionate piety. He wasn't just about emotion.
So for the modern saint, the person seeking real substance, he's a guide. A demanding one maybe, but rewarding.
Definitely rewarding. And what's crucial to grasp is that Edwards really pushed back against the idea that theology should be, simple or shallow.
He brings together this deep philosophical inquiry with heartfelt devotion.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you sometimes feel maybe intellectually constrained by modern devotional writing, Edwards is the antidote.
Ah, yeah, that's a good way to put it.
He challenges you, asks you to bring your absolute best thinking to your spiritual life. And in doing that, he anchors your faith in a kind of logic that goes beyond just cultural trends.
Okay, so let's tackle the title itself, The End for Which God Created the World. That's not just a question, it feels like the fundamental question.
It really is.
What's the immediate impact of that title on a believer? What does it do intellectually?
Well, the title forces an immediate reorientation. It demands that the spiritual seeker recognizes the telos, the ultimate purpose, the end goal of everything.
And that purpose lies where?
Not in us, the creature, but squarely in the Creator. You see, if we start our spiritual path primarily asking, what can God do for me? Or how do I find happiness? Edwards suggests we're already starting in the wrong place.
So this text is like a corrective against maybe a self-centered way of thinking about faith.
A profound corrective, yes. It shifts the focus immediately off of the self and onto God.
That's a critical point for the learner, for the pilgrim. If the journey feels exhausting, maybe it's because the underlying premise is a bit off.
Could be.
But how does wrestling with a dense philosophical text about existence actually provide spiritual nourishment, not just, mental fatigue?
Right, because it can be fatiguing. But the nourishment comes from the stability of the foundation it offers.
Stability. How so?
Think about it. When you're walking a long, often difficult road, the pilgrim's path, stability is everything. Edwards provides this, immovable anchor.
Okay.
He forces the reader, you, to ground your daily struggles, your anxieties, your whole pilgrimage, really, in an eternal framework. And that framework is focused entirely on God's sovereignty and God's purpose.
So it takes the burden off of you having to somehow justify your own existence or create your own meaning.
Precisely. It removes that pressure. The meaning is already there, established in God.
Okay, let's get into the argument itself then. The philosophical rigor is what makes it a classic, right? Edwards's argument seems to hinge on God's absolute independence.
Yes, that's the starting point, he asks. If God is perfectly infinite, perfectly self-sufficient, needing nothing, what could possibly motivate him to create anything at all?
Because he doesn't need us.
Exactly. That's the absolute kernel of the argument. God, being independent and complete, couldn't have an external motive. He couldn't need something from creation or lack anything that creation could supply him.
If the motive was external, then He wouldn't be infinite and independent by definition.
Right. It would imply a lack, a need. So the motive can't be external.
Okay, so if the reason, the end for creation can't be something outside of God, it must be internal. It must stem from God's own nature. What does Edwards conclude that internal purpose is?
He concludes that God's ultimate end, the primary reason he created, must be the communication of himself.
Communication of himself.
Yes, the communication of his divine perfections, his goodness, his beauty, his wisdom, all of it, and ultimately the realization, the manifestation of his own glory.
So God creates to display his glory.
In essence, yes. Edwards pictures God as this infinite fountain of goodness and perfection. And that inherent goodness naturally tends towards overflowing, towards expressing itself. So for God to act for his own glory is simply for him to act consistently with his own infinitely good nature.
Okay, now here's where I think modern readers, modern pilgrims, might struggle. If the ultimate purpose is God's own glory, doesn't that make God sound, well, a bit self-interested? Maybe even narcissistic.
That's a very common reaction. It's an understandable intellectual hurdle.
Yeah, it feels uncomfortable somehow.
It does. But Edwards addresses this, I think, quite beautifully. He makes a crucial distinction. God's ultimate end is his glory. That's the primary end, the number one reason.
Okay.
But there's a secondary subordinate end, and that is the fullness and happiness of the creature. The two are linked.
Ah, okay, so it's not just about God's glory in isolation. How does his glory connect directly to our happiness, the creature's happiness?
It connects through this concept of communication and reflection we just mentioned. God's glory is realized, it's manifested in two main ways.
What are they?
First, in the emanation, the flowing out of his perfections into creation. And second, in the reflection of those perfections back to him by the creatures who perceive and enjoy them.
So our happiness is found in enjoying and reflecting God's perfections.
Exactly. The creature's highest happiness, our greatest good, is found precisely in participating in God's ultimate end. We find joy in seeing and valuing his goodness, his beauty, his wisdom.
So when we find joy in perceiving God's goodness, we are actually fulfilling God's primary purpose for creating us.
Yes, it creates this perfect loop. It's not God or us, it's God's glory and our resulting joy in that glory.
It turns duty into delight.
That's a wonderful way to put it. Edwards summarizes this dynamic somewhere. He says something like, it is simply and exhaustively the communication of himself to the creature and the return of the creature to him.
Wow.
So the joy you experience in God is actually the successful fulfillment of the divine purpose for your existence.
That really shifts your perspective, doesn't it? It means the pilgrim isn't struggling desperately to find purpose out there somewhere,
No.
but is actually invited to participate in a pre-established, magnificent reality.
Correct. And that's where the philosophical rigor provides deep rest. Your purpose isn't something you invent or achieve. It's anchored securely in the very necessity of God's being, his nature.
And that stability helps prevent the spiritual exhaustion we talked about earlier.
I believe so. Because the ultimate goal is no longer dependent on your fluctuating performance or your immediate circumstances or whether you feel successful externally. It depends on God's unwavering character and purpose.
So, okay, let's make this practical. What does this foundational understanding mean for, say, the variety of saints listening? Maybe a young person trying to choose a career path versus an older saint who might be facing loss or a long-term struggle.
Well, for both and everyone in between, it provides the essential theological foundation for critical thinking and application in their own lives. Understanding God's ultimate purpose helps clarify all the immediate decisions and responses.
How so?
If the ultimate end of everything is to perceive and reflect God's perfections, then the key question shifts. It's no longer primarily what will make me happy or what's best for my career.
It
becomes, how can my response to this situation, whether it's choosing a job or facing hardship or dealing with loss, how can my response best reflect God's perfections, like his patience, his faithfulness, his wisdom, his mercy?
So it helps the saint look past the small, immediate concerns and anchor their actions in eternal values. The question isn't just, should I take Job A or Job B?
Right. It might become, in which setting, Job A or Job B, can I potentially have the greatest opportunity to display the excellency of God, to reflect his character? It reframes the decision-making process.
That encourages a profound kind of spiritual maturity, doesn't it?
I think it does. It pulls the believer out of what can sometimes feel like a therapeutic self-help model of faith that's quite prevalent today, and plants them firmly in a robust, God-centered reality, a God-centered cosmology. This work forces you, the reader, to think much bigger than your current circumstances or feelings.
For anyone wanting to actually read this, Edwards is known for his really precise structure, almost legalistic, some might say. He's not just offering a vague feeling, he's building a deductive proof.
He certainly is. It's very
Nice.
logical. And you can find memorable passages where he really emphasizes this connection between God's internal motives,
Yep.
his glory, and the creature's joy.
Is there one that stands out?
Let me think. There's one where he says the ultimate design is that God's glory should be the chief object of the creature's love and delight.
The chief object of our love and delight.
Yes. And he emphasizes that the whole thing, creation, redemption, everything, should be seen as a communication of good, which is fully returned in praise and rejoicing.
That phrase, communication of good, returned and praise and rejoicing, that really wraps up the argument quite neatly. It connects the philosophy to personal response.
It does. It shows how God's purpose and our fulfillment are intrinsically linked.
Okay, so let's try to summarize a bit. We've briefly explored Jonathan Edwards and his, well, incredibly powerful work, The End for Which God Created the World, and we're seeing it not just as some dusty old theology,
Definitely not.
but as an essential foundational blueprint, a way to live a focused, God-centered life that finds real stability, real rest in understanding the necessity of God's own being and purpose.
That's a good summary. It's about finding rest in his reality, not ours.
Okay, time for the final thought.
All right. My final provocative thought for you, the listener, is this. If Edwards is right, if the ultimate purpose of your existence is already fixed and secure in this dynamic of communicating and reflecting God's perfections, then what unnecessary burden, what anxiety are you carrying right now that you might actually be ready to lay down as you continue your pilgrim's walk?
That's a powerful question to reflect on. Thank you for listening to Pilgrim's Rest channel. We welcome you to leave comments about what you gained from listening so that we, as fellow pilgrims, can support and encourage one another. We hope to see you next time.